Hello everyone. Hello dear students. Hello fellow dear learners. Today we are going to do EDUCARE Didactics Theory and Practice N4. Our module for today is about observation. Remember, in N4 we are dealing with children or babies from birth to 18 months. In this module, what we are going to be covering, or what you need to understand in this module, we are going to be covering the definition of observation. We are going to be able to describe the importance of observation. We are going to discuss the method of observation. We are going to discuss the method of record keeping. And lastly, we will be talking about the progress of the child with the parent. In terms of observation, I want you to think about what observation means to you. Let me tell you about myself. What do I think observation is? I'm thinking of, in terms of observation, you do observation, you're looking at something for a specific reason. Or you are looking carefully. When you're talking about didactics, we are talking about looking carefully at the child in order for you to note the actions that the child is doing. Or you are looking at something to make a mental note in order for you to be able to record that in a later stage. Now let's move on to what the textbook definition is. It's saying about observation. Observation is the gathering of information about the child's ability and weaknesses by attentively watching the child in order to gather information. We need to emphasize the fact that you are saying you are looking at the child attentively, watching the child attentively in order for you to be able to gather information. How are you going to gather this information? You're going to gather this information by using informal interviews, or also just listening to how the child communicates with the other children, or listening to how the child communicates with you. Now let's move on to our second point, which is the value or importance of observation. Why are we doing observation in short? We are doing observation because it's necessary. Observation helps us to keep the children safe. Children are there playing, doing what they do best, and children, what do they do best is they are playing. So it helps us to keep the children safe. We are there observing them, therefore we will be able to see the pitfalls before they even happen and be able to prevent that from happening. It helps us to discover the child's area of strength and weakness or difficulty. Observation helps the educator to plan suitable activities for the child. Whilst you are observing the child, you'll be able to see the limitations and abilities of the child. Therefore, the lesson plan that you are going to prepare for the child will be based on the ability of the child. Let me give you an example. You have two babies. The other one can be able to sit. Then the activity that you will be able to do with the child is that you can place the ball in front of the child and let the child crawl towards the ball. And then using the same ball with the child who can be able to walk, you put the ball and let the child kick the ball. Those two activities, you are always doing physical activity with the two children. But because through observation, you know the stage of development of this other label and the stage of development of SIPO. Yeah. So it helps the educator to plan suitable activities. It also helps with referral. While you are observing the child, you are able to see the limitations of the child, or also where the child exceeds. Therefore, if you need to refer the child for remedial purpose, your observation report, your observation chart will be able to help you to refer the child to a relevant specialist. Lastly, observation allows for information sharing. At the end of the term, at the end of the semester of the year, what do? We compile a report, a progress report, and send it to the parents. But we're also keeping it for ourselves so that the child, when he or she progresses to the next level, we can be able to, the next educator who will be dealing with the child can be able to refer to that and know the progress of the child, at what stage, what developmental stage the child is in at that moment. Okay. That was our second point. Our third point is the method of observation. We've defined the observation, we've talked about the value of observation. Now we're moving on to the method of observation. How do we do this? That we have been talking about. We have been talking about observation. How do we do this? We do this, observation is done throughout the day. There's no way that you can say in your daycare center to say that at this moment, no, I'm on break, I'm taking a break, I don't want to take care of these children, I don't want to watch these children. If you're taking a break, then somebody else has to come in to take care of the children. So observation is done throughout the day. We have methods that we use in order for us to do the observation. We have what we call the descriptive. We use the descriptive records in order for us to capture what observation is all about. When you talk about the descriptive records, we're talking about the educator writes down in detail what he or she is observing. The child is there playing. The educator looks at what the child is doing and writes down exactly what the child is doing. I was talking about Lebu. Lebu is starting to crawl. You want to observe whether Lebu is able to crawl. Is scrolling by the tummy, or is using the bum to crawl, or is using the knees to crawl. You want to actually be able to write down how Lebu crawls. Then what are you going to do? You write it down in detail. I put the ball in front of Lebu, and Lebu fell on his tummy and pushed and kicked his legs to going forward, or even trying to go forward. You know how babies are. Sometimes they try to go forward, but the movement takes it, they go back. But that's what you are going to do. It's what you call a descriptive and narrative description in terms of method of observation. That's what you're going to write down. There are advantages and disadvantages of this method. The advantage is that it records as clearly as possible what happens. Somebody else, when he or she reads what you have written, they will be able to understand what is happening. The disadvantage is that it is time consuming. Imagine you have a number of babies that you have to record in terms of use the descriptive record method with them. Then you need to sit down and record for Lebu, sit down and record for Pindi, let's sit down and record for Neo. So it is really time consuming. The second one is the checklist method. A checklist consists of a list of criteria or skills that a child should be able to perform or achieve. It has a yes or no, or putting a tick or a cross to answer the questions. Let me give you an example of what a checklist can look like. You can have questions like, if you want to check whether this child is now at the stage where he or she can be able to eat alone or without assistance, you can have questions like, can the Neo be able to hold a glass with one hand? Then on the side, it's yes or no, then you tick. Can Neo be able to feed with a spoon, feed himself or herself with a spoon? You tick yes, no. So that is what the checklist method is. It's about. You are observing the child, but you also have to record what is it that you are observing in order for you to come up to a conclusion. We have advantages and disadvantages of this method also. The advantage of this method is that it's easy and it's fast. Once you have recorded what you want to observe, then it's easy because it's just you are ticking the boxes. The disadvantage is that it's not flexible, it's inflexible. and it is closed, it does not allow for unexpected behavior, you cannot be able to record that in the checklist. The last method, observation method that we are going to talk about is participation or movement chart. This chart indicates which play area the child frequently visited during free play. You remember that when we're talking about free play, we are talking about the period where the children decides on which play area they want to go, whether they want to go to the fantasy play area, whether they want to go to the book corner, whether they want to go to the music corner. So in terms of participation or movement chart, this is what we are going to be recording. We let the children to choose the activity that they want to do, but over a period of time, we will be recording to see label every time it's free play, label goes to the music corner. What will that indicate? Once you record that for a long period, you'll be able to get a pattern of behavior. You'll be able to see that label really likes music, which means label is musically inclined. It shows the preference of the child. The advantages of this is that it's simple and quick to record. And then it's easy to interpret also. But the disadvantage is that it has a time factor attached to it. It has to happen over a period of time for you to be able to see or recognize the pattern, to see that every time it's free play, label goes to a music corner. Then it has to happen over a period of time before you can come to a conclusion of some sort. Okay. While still on the method of observation, there are things that we need to take care of. We need to follow certain criteria to make sure that the observation is proper, to make sure that observation is done properly. You need to make sure that you ensure confidentiality. Those charts, those observation tools that you have been using, those charts that you have been completing, those checklists, you need not leave them lying around. You need to make sure that they're filed properly and put safely. You need to make sure that when you are assessing those children, when you are observing those children, make sure that the children are not aware of what you are doing, because that will be intimidating and inhibiting the results that you really want to observe. You need to also make proper planning. Proper planning will help you to decide which observation method you want to use. Okay. You also need to be objective. Objective in a sense that you are not going to compare the children. You are not going to say compare label and tab. You are going to be able to record what label can be able to do in terms of according to your checklist or according to your observation tool. You always have to maintain contact with the parents, because it might happen that there is something that is disturbing, that is disturbing at home, and when the child comes to the daycare center, they might exhibit behavior or mannerism that you don't understand, and it might influence your observation report. Therefore, once you have contact with the parents will be able to tell you that please know that this happened last night, therefore be on the lookout for maybe this might affect our baby, this might affect our child. Okay. In short, that's how we deal with our observation and the criteria that will help us to ensure that we make our observation properly. Let's move on to record keeping. We have different methods of record keeping, but in order for us not to forget observation information, we need to keep record of what is it that we have done. We have different types of records that we always keep in our daycare centers. One is attendance register. Attendance register is not only kept in the daycare center. We all know, you even know that even in our classrooms now, before we even started, we start with the attendance register. The value of our attendance register is that it gives us information, and we can, from that, doing attendance register, we can be able to see the pattern. If Lebu is not being brought to the daycare center every Monday, then from the attendance register, we'll be able to see, when we close the register, we'll be able to see that Lebu is not being brought to the daycare center every day. We also have what we call an incident register. From that, you can see, you can be able to deduce that you have to register whatever could have happened, which is not usual. Whatever could have happened in the daycare center, you record the incident that happened. Let's say maybe the child got, there was an accident. The kids bumped on one another, and you know how kids are when they were playing. Those are the records that we keep, that you indicate in the incident register. The third one is what you call POE, Portfolio of Evidence. We keep the sample of all the children's work for assessment purpose. The children, when they are in our daycare center, what do? They are busy playing, they are busy coloring, and we send some of those home, but some of them we keep them in our daycare center. We keep them in their files, so that we should, that's the evidence that they have done, or we have also done a certain activity with the children. Observation progress report, that's another one. Progress report, we all know that at the end of the term, we need to be able to write progress report in order to, because we have been observing the children, we have to indicate and tell the parents how far the child has developed, or the achievements that the child has made during the term. In terms of us, because we are dealing with babies from 0 to 18 months, it is advisable that we start with the monthly reports. We write progress reports on a monthly basis, then we move on to quarterly basis, and then we can also move on to 6 monthly reports. So that's our different methods of record keeping. Lastly, this observation that we have been doing, we need to discuss the progress of the child with the parent. Remember, the child's education is a partnership between the school as well as the parent. So when you come into discussing the progress, we have been doing observation all along. So in terms of what the purpose of the observation was, we need to discuss the progress of the child with the parent. Yeah. Remember, child's education is a partnership between parents and the school. The purpose of the discussion should be to give the parents a simple and clear explanation of the child's progress in the center. That should be what is in our minds at all times. Irrespective of whether Lebu is a high achiever or is a slow learner. No, the purpose of that progress report or talking to the parents is to give them a clear explanation of the child progress in the center. When we discuss the progress of the child, the educator should keep the following in mind. You need to talk to the parents and come up with a correct or a time that you both agree upon. You need to call the parent, or you can send the message in the child's diary and agree on the time and the correct place that you can be able to meet. When I'm talking about the correct place, I'm talking about the setup in the early learning center, Once you are with the parents, you need to be able to discuss with the parent, not using the jargon that we use. You should be able to discuss with the parents, in a simple manner. Remember earlier on I talked about the POEs. When you discuss with the parents, you can't say to the parents, look at my POE, the SIPO, this is SIPO's POE, and this is what I've compiled in SIPO's POE. You need to use simple language that the parents can be able to understand. Tell them that this is SIPO's file. It has all the evidence of what SIPO has been doing in the daycare center. You also need to be honest, but bearing in mind the parents' feelings. Once you are discussing with the parents, in a setup that is relaxed, you need to make sure that the parents also express their opinion. When discussing the progress of the child with the parents, you need to allow the parents to express their feelings. You may start by asking them about how Lebu is at home, so that they should be able to relax, and then you can move on to your observation in the daycare center. You need to always be positive and give advice when necessary. We are saying when necessary because in your observation, you are not going to make a conclusion, or you are not going to make an assumption. There are specialists, specialists that you can refer the child to. So you can only make give advice and let the parents send their child to a specialist. You need to be professional, and professionalism comes with preparation, which means you need to prepare for the meeting that you are going to have with the parents. At the end of the meeting, you need to close that discussion with on a positive note. You need to make the parents comfortable and look forward to, Lebu still continuing, even after going for remedial, coming back and continuing in the daycare center. The parents should feel like the child is not judged in the daycare center, but because we have decided that it is a partnership, then we are together in this, and we will make sure that Lebu, who is our little diamond, we are polishing this little diamond together so that it should shine, and the Lebu should rise up and shine as the star that he or she is. Okay. So that's all about observation. But before we conclude, before we end this discussion, let's go back and reflect on what we have covered. At the beginning of we said we are going to talk about the definition of observation. Okay. We did. Are you happy? Did we cover? Now go back to your definition, the definition that you had written, and evaluate it against what we have just talked about. I believe most of you will be able to see now that you understand observing the child much more easier or much better now. We also just talked about the importance or the value of observation. I mean, you are learners, you are studying EDUCARE. Your purpose is not only to go to the daycare center and sit there and watch the children, but your purpose is also to go and observe those children and teach those children. So you will understand why is it important for you to observe the children at all times. We also discussed the method of observation as well as the method of record keeping, and we ended up with how we report the child's progress or discuss the child's progress with the parents. I think that's where we will end for today, and I hope you will now go into your textbooks and delve much more on this subject, observation. Thank you.